Welcome back, everyone, to Making Waves, the show from the Chicago Maritime Museum all about our city's past and present on the waterways. I'm Madeline Crispell, the museum's curator, and with me, as always, is Sari Breslin, the museum's education director.
Thank you, Madeline. This Black History Month is an excellent time to reflect on the many Black Chicagoans who helped shape our city's maritime history, from Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable to Captain Bill Pinkney. Joining us this week to explore some of these stories is a very special guest, author, illustrator, and sailor Pamela Rice.
Now, Pamela Rice has released 18 books in the last 10 years, including When the Brown Bird Flies on Tuskegee Airman pilot Jack Lyle and Aaron's Dreams on the experience of a young sailor. She is the illustrator of Captain Bill Pinkney's children's book, Sailing Commitment Around the World, and her illustrations, her beautiful illustrations, also feature very prominently at the Chicago Maritime Museum in our permanent exhibition on Captain Bill's life and journey. Now, she's also written nonfiction books on Black adventures, including Sailors, Surfers, and Divers. And Pamela is also one of the founders of the Black Chicago Sailors. And in 1994, she was part of the first all-African-American crew to sail the Mackinac Race. We are so very excited to welcome Pam onto Making Waves. Thank you, Pamela, for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Pam, there's so much to talk to you about. But can you give us a little insight onto what it is that got you starting to sail?
Well, I got into sailing, I think I was in college, and a friend and I used to always go to the lake, and we'd try to rent the sailboats that they had available, and we were always too late to get a boat. And pretty much they were like sunfish. And
what's a sunfish for the people at home?
The sunfish they run anywhere from 12 to 14 feet. And they're a simple boat, a simple sail, but it was something that they would rent to the public. And
no motor, though.
No motor.
On Lake Michigan?
They weren't that sophisticated. I mean, they were pretty simple, and that's why they rented them right off the beach. So that, there was a low liability, you might say. So we decided that we would just go and buy one. So we went in 50-50 and we bought one. And once it was delivered, we put it together and went to the water. That was it.
We have a beautiful picture of you on this boat.
This one is, this particular one is a 22-foot South Coast. That was the first big boat with a motor that I did get. But that didn't come till like in the 80s. So that was sailing out of Racine, Wisconsin, and something that we did often. And it just led me to, bigger boats and going to extended ports. So that was something that's when I really took hold to sailing, actually getting out on the water. Yeah.
So, our viewers will know we have a permanent exhibition at the museum about Captain Bill Pinkney. And I know that it's within this period of you getting out on the water, becoming a sailor, that you encountered Bill. Could you tell us a little bit about how you met Captain Bill?
I met Bill, and I can't pinpoint the exact time, but we were at a picnic or some kind of outing, and I noticed that he, he's dressed like a sailor, and so I introduced myself. And after that was we were just, it was rare for him to meet a woman sailing. So I think we just kind of hooked up, and that was it. In fact, the last shot that you just had, that was the boat that he actually went sailing with me on. And we were at that time down in Chicago on the lakefront, and he was showing me different points of sail, and I kind of was taking notes through that whole time, that initial time we had gone out. And so that was a good starter program, dealing with Bill.
Right.
Yeah, that was great.
The picture that we have of Captain Bill on Commitment, that was the boat that he sailed. There we go. That he solo circumnavigated around the globe.
Yes.
Did you ever sail with him on Commitment?
No, but when it was out in front of the Chicago Yacht Club right before he left. It was like an opening, an open house, and a lot of people were invited, and we all had a chance to take a tour of the boat, and see his inventory, the sails that he had, and it was a good that was a good moment. We really had an opportunity to see what it was going to be like sailing by himself, and.
And what were your impressions of the book?
Well,
Could you imagine spending so much time on it alone?
Yeah, when we were out sailing on the South Coast, he did tell me, he said, I'm going to sail around the world at some point. He says, I don't know how soon it's going to be, but that's what I'm working on right now. And I thought, okay, to myself, this is going to be interesting. And he said, I hadn't told anybody yet, but I'm working on it. He says, when I get close to, getting some of the details down, he says, then I'll make it public. But, I felt a little privileged because, he mentioned it at that time.
You got in on the ground floor.
On
You
the
were one
ground
of the first
floor,
people to hear about this.
Yeah. And then, to see it actually come to being, was really exciting, because at that point we knew it was happening.
Right.
Yeah, we knew it was happening.
So when did the Mack race with Bill and the black sailors come about? We have a photo of that as well.
Yes, we made a decision. There was this pretty much the same group. We were in the yacht club one evening. I never forget, it was a Tuesday evening, and we were talking about it, and then, it was a bunch of guys, and I think one of the ladies was there, and I said, isn't this something that we could do? And so one of the guys, Wes Smith, he was not a superintendent, but a principal at one of the Chicago schools. He says, we can do this. But the only problem, we would need to have someone who had actually sailed to Mac, and we would also need a boat. And I think after we went back and forth about 20 minutes, we had everything nailed down. We had the bill, we had the boat, and the rest of that was detail. We decided, okay, so we started, dividing up responsibilities and who's going to take care of this and that, and the galley, the equipment, the labeling, the whole shebang, and I was going to do the public relations.
Of course.
And it happened. I mean, we got everything. We had our PR person. We had media, press releases, everything. Everything was done. So, I mean, it went together like it was planned. It was
like
supposed to.
Like it was meant to be.
Like it was meant to be.
For our international audience, I'm sure everyone at home has already heard of the race to Mackinac, the Mackinac Race.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very historic race that happens every summer from Chicago to Mackinac Island. That's the Straits of Mackinac that separate the Great Lakes right at the tip of Michigan. Now, this is a particularly historic voyage, though, because it was the first time there was ever an all-African-American sailing crew.
Well, there was a crew that tried to, back in 1969. These guys were firemen out of Vernon Harbor. And one of our crew, who was a dentist, had the actual log from these guys. They left out of Vernon Harbor, and they didn't get very far because that was before they actually had any GPSs or anything like that. And so I don't think they got further than New Buffalo,
Not that far.
But they made an effort, you know. And there were no women aboard, of course.
different from yours, which we can see in this other photo we
that was
have
the
of
thing
the
that
crew.
made us different. And we were all skippers, and that was another thing that made us different, that we all had our own boats.
That picture looked like it was in Jackson Park.
This
one.
Yeah, this was in Jackson Park. That was a one of the practice runs, and we had one of the press people came down. They were taking pictures that day.
And what's the name of that boat?
Upaniana.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Now, was this process the part of being on this crew where you worked so together, you did this historic achievement? Is that part of what led you and others to found the Black Chicago Sailors?
well, actually, I founded the BlackChicagoSailors.org. It was a virtual
founder right here.
a virtual site, and the reason why it was virtual is because, you know, it was difficult to try to pull sailors in, as you know, to have meetings and whatnot. So we decided it would just be virtual, and because we saw each other pretty much every day when we were down at the harbor, and so there was no need to have any structure as far as meetings and so forth.
Right.
What I tried to do with Black Chicago Sailors was, in 2006, was pull together all of the black sailors that we could get our hands on or contact in the Chicago area, included Indiana as well, just to have a listing of those sailors and, you know, what they did, a little bit about their experiences, and so that we would have a resource. We wanted a resource, and that was the spot. And it's built up over the years. You know, we've added information, and sometimes we get a lot more information than we do others. You know, the accomplishments of various sailors, some that have gone on to actually do races every year consistently. Quite a few have gone on to do Mac races. Shortly after we finished that first one in '94, there was always a group going out. Yeah.
For all of our students out there who are doing a paper for Black History Month, you can go to blackchicagosailors.org.
It's an excellent resource. I use it myself. You can see the homepage right there.
Yeah, and get all kinds of information on all these different famous sailors in the city of Chicago.
Right. Now, you know, we've talked quite a bit about your sailing, your relationship with Bill. You have this whole other part of your life, which is part of why we brought you here today, too, which is your art, your illustration, your authorship. We're definitely going to be talking about some of your books today. We were hoping you could tell us a little bit about how did you get involved in art? Was that always a part of your life?
Yes, I was always an artist. You know, my father was an artist. He was a commercial artist, is what they called, you know, most graphic designers back in the day. And he was, right before he passed away, he got a job offer with Hallmark in St. Louis. But my mother nurtured the artistic side of me.
I love moms.
And she always, you know, embellished. You know, got me in courses in different classes at various places and so forth. So it was a natural kind of thing to do. You know, I think the first book I ever did was I was in second grade, and I did the Billy Goat in the Rose Bush or something like that. And I put together a book. You know, it had illustrations and it had the whole bit, hardcover and all. And so, you know, that was my first attempt at doing a book. But the library that I have now came about from my most reliable resource, and that is my childhood experiences. You know, that's a source that would never dry.
Yeah.
You know, because everyone has childhood experiences that they could call up at any time, no matter how small. Something very simple can certainly be embellished to something larger, and that's where my ideas come from. The When the Brown Bird Flies is
We have covers of two of your recent
yeah,
books.
When
we
the
can
Brown
show
Bird
here.
Flies came from knowing Jack Lyle, who was a Tuskegee Airman, and
You've also written a book for adults on Jack Lyle as well, right?
I didn't write it; I produced it, and it was an idea that I wanted to do while Jack was still around.
Right.
And so I pulled in one of my friends who is a writer to actually interview him, and then Jack's wife gathered all the information and photographs, and so we put together a nice piece
You can
for
see
Jack.
that cover
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
It's a great looking book.
Yeah, and he was pleased with it, and that was important. It was something that I wanted to do because the story needed to be told.
Absolutely.
And I think we did a good job at doing it because he was pleased with it and his family was pleased with it.
No, of course he's a Tuskegee Airman.
Yeah,
He was a sailor
yeah,
as
and
well,
a sailor
right?
too.
Oh my
yeah.
God, a very well-loved sailor
Yeah.
at Jackson Park Harbor. Everybody wanted Jack to come out sailing with them. And you know a lot about the Tuskegee Airmen, and you talked about how Jack liked to take risks.
Yes, he did. That's what Tuskegee men
Had to do.
were made. They were made to be tough and take risk, and he did that. He was also a cyclist, a motorcyclist. He had various motorcycles, and also he had a Chicago tree service. So he didn't mind climbing trees and swinging from limb to limb, and that was the kind of thing that Jack loved to do, and we still honor him. Because he was always very, active.
Now, it seems like a lot of your work deals with adventures and risk takers. And, of course, Captain Bill Pinkney, who solo circumnavigated the globe. You can see the beautiful cover, some of your illustrations from inside his book right here. Not only do we have these images of it, we have the book in the flesh, or the paper, so to speak. Sari brought her copy of it in. I should say her grandchildren's copy. We'll get it back to you soon.
Signed by Captain Bill and Pamela.
Now, tell us a little bit, how did this come to be?
I approached Bill, and because he was always in the books, he had quite a few books he put together, and there was at least 3 that he wanted to redo. And he didn't have any original scripts to any original text or anything. So my job was to just take one of the books and dismantle it, have all the pages scanned, and we were just going to redo each book. So that was fine, but that was put on the shelf when I came up with the idea of doing a children's book. And the fun part of it was that being a sailor, you know, when he told me about all this travels and things, in my eyes, I could see all this happening. And he told me one day after we got things pretty much together, he said, well, I couldn't wait to get up in the mornings because I knew when I turned my computer on, I was going to have a new spread. So, I was doing this stuff spread by spread. And, within 3 weeks, the book was put together. The text, he already had the text for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those illustrations then became a cornerstone of our exhibit at the museum, as you can see. Those same illustrations from your book then illustrate Captain Bill's journey through this exhibition at our museum. And we have a photo of the exhibition, one of the sides of the exhibition, where you can see how some of your illustrations have been used, and it's a joy as the curator to be able to come in and see these in the museum.
Yeah, they were fun to do, and when I would read the text and he would tell me about the different experiences, so I could pick up on those nuances and do what embellishes that I could.
You can see here, you know, all the different parts of the exhibition. The through line is how you visualized Bill's story. And that's something that I think someone who was not a sailor, I would have a much harder time figuring out where to put what on those photos of the boat.
Yeah, that came real. That was fun. That was a really fun piece to put together. Yeah.
Now, we unfortunately only have a few more minutes with you today on our episode, Pam, but, you know, we're hoping, could you tell us a little bit more? I know you have some other books that, you know, not just Bill, there are other Black adventurers who your work follows.
Well, there are a lot of them, and I found that many of them were right around me, all around me, especially at the harbor. There were people that flew planes, there were people that scuba dived, there were people that rode horses, that did rodeo, and it came to 9 people in the first book called Our Red Skies. It was fantastic learning about all these people, and it really drove me into, you know, what these people actually did when they weren't sailing.
Right.
Because I had no idea until, you know, I found out about them. And one guy who was a cyclist, he didn't sail, but he raced, and he was blind.
Wow.
So that really, you know, that just took the cake. So I said, okay, this is what it's going to be. And so after that, I mean, I kept finding people kept just coming before me with all these.
You're the storyteller.
I was the storyteller, and I was telling the story.
Right.
Thank God.
Well, I mean, so many stories. I wish we had you here for 9 hours to get into more of these, but simply our viewers at home are going to need to head out and buy one of Pam's excellent books on this rich history.
And they're online, and they're on the website. I have a little banner on the bottom of the blackchicagosailors.org. Just click on it, and the books are available.
Now, in the meantime, you can come down to the Chicago Maritime Museum Tuesday through Sunday, 10 to 4, to see Pam's beautiful illustrations.
And we have some books.
And you can get a copy of one of these books.
How about that?
Now, thank you all so much for tuning in again this month. Thank you, Pam,
You're
so
welcome.
much for joining us.
My pleasure.
It's been a pleasure and an honor to have you here today.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madeline. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Happy Valentine's Day and happy Black History Month from the
Yes,
Chicago
happy
Maritime
Black-
Museum.